MAST is here to stay. But what are the realities of rolling out a new statewide assessment? Teacher Rachel Barkell joins us this episode to talk about strategies, challenges, and takeaways from the first year of implementation.
I always wanted to be a teacher when I started school.
We're here for the students and we want what's best for the student.
And I love watching people learn.
Your teacher, student, academics, curriculum, whatever, that center post, the one that keeps this education together.
Hi, and welcome to the Last Best Learning podcast, a podcast designed for Montana's educators, where our mission is to deliver digestible, relevant, professional learning, honoring your capacity in an increasingly busy world. If there's a topic or speaker you'd like to learn from, we'd love to hear from you. Our state's educators empower minds, elevate futures, and inspire self-discovery, and we walk beside them. We're your hosts, Claire Mikeson, Katrina Engeldrum, and Michelle McCarthy, OPI's ELA, Math, and Science coordinators. Our guest today is Rachel Barkell, a teacher at Anaconda School District, who's here to reflect on her first official year of implementing MAST, which stands for Montana Aligned to Standards Through Year. MAST became Montana's official assessment model last year, after 2 years of piloting by schools across the state. We're excited to have Rachel with us to share her experience and talk about Anaconda's approach to Montana's new state assessment. Welcome, Rachel. Can you start by introducing yourself and your role in education?
I am Rachel Barkell. I teach at Fred Moodry Intermediate in Anaconda, Montana, and I'm teaching 4th grade. This is my 12th year teaching.
Thank you. So our first question about MAST is, what would you say were your most salient lessons that you learned as your school went through that implementation process last year? And what challenges arose? How did you take those on? That's sort of a two-part question.
Yeah, I think our district and our school especially learned a lot because we've spent a lot of time going through proficiency-based standards, proficiency-based assessments. And so it was a good lesson for us to look and see what standards were being assessed on the state tests and compare it to our assessments that we are doing in our district, in our school, and our grade levels. That was a really good lesson to kind of see, did we prioritize appropriate standards? Are we teaching with fidelity the standards that we have prioritized? We were able to get together with our grade level teams, and now our math and ELA teams will be meeting this year to look at those. And so I think those were some good lessons, just looking at breaking down our subject areas into standards and really having that be done on the MAST assessments for us as well, and making all those connections. I think that was some of our district conversations as to what were some of the positives that we took away from that. Some of the challenges, I would say, which is probably across the state, is time, right? We never have enough time for everything. There's always could be more time finding out when to assess our own classroom standards and then when to assess the MAST standards. Those were kind of some challenges, just balancing the time so there's not tests every day for our kids. And finding how to teach within the testing windows was, I think, one other challenge that we faced across the board, making sure content was taught before the window was up and making sure we were getting those assessments done in a timely manner while still moving forward with our other curriculum.
Yeah, that makes sense. How much of a say did you and your teaching colleagues have in that math alignment? Because I know that was an issue that some teachers found last year, if they didn't have a voice in that, and then kind of being surprised by that sequence. So what was your experience with that?
My experience was that we have been kind of, this process started pre-2020, where we were looking at standards and vertically aligning them within our district. And it's really been a district-wide, team level-wide effort. Everyone has had their hands in it. Everyone's had training on it. And so when we looked at our math standards as a 4th grade team member, and I am fairly new to the 4th grade team. This is my 3rd year in 4th grade, but I came in and every grade level had prepared those math standards ahead of time. So we had vertically aligned K6 the standards, and there was committees to do that then brought that back to their teams. And then we had a representative from each grade level go to the first meeting when they were setting up the MAST testing windows to look at how to appropriately place the tests, which was really helpful. And then they came back to our team level meeting and said, here's what I came up with. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do we need to move anything? And the nice thing is, just already looking ahead, the math team has met and my team member has already come back and said, we talked about moving this test to this window or adjusting these. And so we have real time say in making those adjustments and letting everyone know what was successful, what we could probably do a little bit better, and what worked within our grade level and within our school.
Rachel, do you find that having those conversations as a team has helped with some of those timing issues, or is it kind of making it more complex as you guys go through?
I think it's really helped. We've kind of set up so someone goes to the math or the MAST meeting. So there's one person per grade level and they can kind of absorb everything and then come back to us. And then we can kind of have almost that more private, more just our team level, the four of us, where we can really talk about our grade level. So I think that is super helpful in our district that we're able to do that. So there's, 3 to 4 of us on the 4th grade team that are sitting down. So it's a lot easier to voice your opinions. Yeah. And we're talking in real time. And like last year when we got done with the test, or when we were trying to teach up to a test and pace to a test, we were all talking about, well, if we had more time or if we could move this. And so those adjustments were easy to make within our team.
Yeah, it sounds like it provides a good opportunity for you all to voice what struggles you're having, and then that representative to say on your behalf, this is what the team is saying. How can we address that? Which is good practice in anything, but especially here in MAST.
Yeah.
I'm wondering too, you mentioned how you did a lot of standard setting as a team and you went through your grade levels. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how your district implements the proficiency-based learning that you all use, and how did MAST help support those practices in the district?
Yeah, so like I said, just kind of going back, we started this process in 2020. And so my dates may be a little bit off, just kind of thinking off the top of my head, but within 2021 or 2022, we started rolling out proficiency-based pre-KK. And then every year as those kids went through school, they were always on a proficiency-based report card. So when they went to the next grade, then the 1st grade team was ready that year to do proficiency-based and so on. So as they came up with my 4th graders, they had never seen a report card that wasn't proficiency-based. And so even now that they're going to 5th grade, 5th and 6th grade has rolled. And so that has been really helpful, I think, across the board for parents, for students, for teachers. We can go to the 3rd grade team and say, oh, what can you help us with as we do this in our first year? So it wasn't everyone K6 was in a new year of something that we had never approached. So that was super helpful. And that was helpful in aligning our standards K6, because we could, still reflect if K6 or K1 prioritize something, and then that was a change. There was kind of a living document where we all were aware of what was happening along those standards.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to handle that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I feel like so many scenarios in schools, it's like, hurry up and implement full implementation this year. Everyone do it. Here's a giant book of a how-to guide. And I think it's really cool that they did that in phases so that you could develop on the teacher side, teachers that were already comfortable, who had tried it, who could pass on the lessons that they learned. And then on the parent side, you don't have to get everybody bought in at once. You were really focusing on one group of kids, which makes it a lot more scalable. It's a really smart way to do it.
It was really helpful. And so now K6 is on that track.
Yeah. So did they do 2 grades every year? It sounds like maybe, or
I
one
think so,
grade.
yeah, I know 5, 6 went together. I think pre-KK, maybe 1, 2 went together because they're at the same building. And then the building I'm in is 3rd through 6th grade. So we went 1 grade at a time.
Nice.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Earlier, you mentioned that there were 4 people on your team. So there's 4 4th grades?
So 4 people. So we last year we had 4 fourth grade teachers. This year we have 3. And there's a special ed teacher that is usually a part of the team decision that's with the 3rd, 4th graders.
That's great that you get to hear that voice. So getting down to the nitty gritty is when you actually got your score reports and everything, how did that work when you were sending those for the students and to share those with the families? And is there anything you would change?
I think the nice part with the families is, because looking at how they're graded, it's not a percentage or it's kind of that number based on the scale. And that was, like I said, familiar to a lot of our families. So that sort of scaling, even though it didn't look exactly the same, was familiar. So I think that was really great for our families in communication, that they recognize that scale of, below proficient, and those kind of things. I think this year we'll be able to it'll give us more data points to talk to our families about as we directly compare and align our report card assessments to those MAST assessments. Last year we probably didn't have quite the time to make sure that was super clearly communicated. This MAST assessment directly matches what we did in class here. So you can see, either, wow, they did really great on this assessment and this one, not as well, or look at they're proving across the board that they know this standard. So I think that's a conversation we'll have in our team meetings moving forward, is how to communicate those direct correlations between what we were already doing and how to tie MAST into that.
And I'm sorry, this is a follow-up. Did you mail the score reports to the parents? Did you share them during parent-teacher?
They were mailed and then they can access them online, and that link was sent home to parents to look at those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This wasn't one we put on our question list, but I'm kind of surprised we left it off. Can you kind of share a little bit more? You mentioned that you guys met up with your teams to look at that data. How did you review that, and what changes did you guys make to instruction?
Yeah, so I think the biggest part that we did first was we got together with our testing coordinator with the district, and she just gave us all a breakdown of how to look at that data. It was new to all the teachers who had implemented the testing, and so she just kind of showed us all the highlights and the ways that we were able to take that data, look at that data, understand everything in it. So that was, I think, one of the big pieces of using all that information the best we could. And within teams, again, kind of just with it being our first year, towards the end, what we really did is we were starting to make those comparisons between our own assessments and the MAST assessments, looking at scores. A lot of times it was reflected maybe on the MAST assessment. We weren't seeing quite the scores that we were seeing on a classroom paper pencil test. So conversations were had as to how do we make this feel to the students just as valuable as that other test that they're doing, and making sure that they understand the value in the MAST assessment and that those scores are going to be reflected across the board as well for them.
That's a really interesting point that you made about the classroom assessment potentially not lining up with the feedback that they're getting on MAST, and it'd definitely be interesting to explore that. I'm glad you guys have the opportunity to have those discussions. I wonder, did you guys find anything throughout those discussions where you figured out maybe this is why that is, or have you guys not dove into that level yet?
I can't say we've really found any solutions on that level yet. I mean, we've had some conversations in passing, and I think just this switch, right? Fourth graders or the younger kids, number one, had not really seen these important computer-based tests before. That's different to them in general. And if they have, they've seen more of the SBAC, where it's, those bigger tests with all those skills, where there was some of the feeling of overwhelm, which is one of the positives we like about MAST, is that it is so concentrated and they're shorter. And so kind of getting kids on board in those shorter timeframes, I think, will be a little bit easier, and showing them the reflection of, we just went over this in class. We just talked about this, we're reviewing, and now we're going to take a test that hopefully they'll start to see those correlations and put the value on the computer-based assessment as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like that you guys aren't just kind of treating the test as the gospel of this is why a student's, this student's succeeding or not succeeding because of this one metric. Because I think sometimes in other tests too, just in the world of assessment, we can sometimes get bogged down in this one indicator says that the student is not achieving at the rate that we want them to. And then we can get kind of stuck on that. So I'm glad that you're looking at the full picture of here's what we're seeing in the classroom. And you're having, it sounds like, some of those conversations with kids too. So that's really cool. Michelle, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I did have a question, and since I'm delayed, that's why I raised my hand. One thing that I wanted to ask you, Rachel, and it isn't in the questions, but I think it would be helpful for others. If you, from your experience, because you had a little bit longer time, because you guys were a pilot school also, right? So what advice would you give to like a new teacher coming on and they've never seen this test? Or I'm just wondering, if we could pick your brain that might help the field for those who listen.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the first year when we piloted, it just looked so different because we didn't have the time to plan our instruction around which assessments we were taught. The ELA, I think, is such a great setup that there isn't the specifics within ELA, because ELA is you're always revisiting so many of those standards. So that is nice. And with math, I would just say, that you have to have your year paced out to appropriately be able to assess those math standards. Because even as a grade level team, who I feel like we had a really solid math pacing guide in place, we had to make tweaks and adjustments. And, sometimes it was, well, we're going to kind of skip these ones and we'll come back to them, but we have to kind of teach some aspect of this standard. And so just being flexible in that as well, having a plan, but also being willing to change that plan so you can hit topics, I think is important. And I think we found, like I said, I think going into this year, we'll have a much more solid plan as to how that will look with our instruction based upon our MAST testing calendar.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think that that's going to be helpful for people to hear. I heard a lot of like grace and flexibility in that answer. And yeah, I wanted to ask, because I know that there's like mixed practices happening in classrooms all across the state within that like testing window. I wonder, you mentioned how you need to be a little bit flexible and kind of shifting maybe what you're teaching around as appropriate. And when you give your testlets, do you do it in kind of the chunks, or do you do the full thing at the end of the testing window?
We set it up that we tried to do it in chunks. So we tried to kind of align it with the end of a chapter, assessing the standard that was with that chapter. It seems like it always ended up at the end of one testing window. There was two that we kind of had to get done back to back. It felt a little bit more, but with starting so early, there was usually time where, we can instruct for a week and then we can assess. And so there was some of that time where I didn't feel like we had to do them back to back. And then the nice thing was we would sit down at the beginning of every testing window as a team and look at when we were going to do those tests. And then we could place the ELA tests on different days for our kids as well, so that they never tested a math testlet and an ELA testlet on the same day. We tried to kind of space those out just so that it wasn't a full day of testing.
Yeah. So how much time do you, like, if you had to estimate, how much time do you feel like you spent during your instructional time on the math or the ELA testlet on any given day?
So the way that just our specific schedule is set up, and it's similar with other grades in our building, we have about an hour and a half for ELA every day. So we usually set aside most of that chunk for an ELA assessment. And then the math ones, it usually seemed like we could get done a little bit quicker. So we usually had about 45 minutes set up for those ones.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's great to hear a classroom perspective. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, we haven't talked about kids, and I know we didn't put this in the questions either, but are you hearing your students say anything special or notable about the assessments?
I don't know if they said anything. Like I said, I think if you were to talk to some of the older kids who had previously seen those big, long tests, I think there would probably be more conversation of, oh my gosh, this is, but, sometimes the kids are like, that was easy, that was fast. And so, those are kind of things that you like to hear in an assessment, because that kids, that's going to keep their attention and they're going to probably show a little bit more accurate scores if they think it was something quick and easy, as opposed to, oh my gosh, that felt so long, that felt so hard. So they like, their reflection was just that they, they were like, oh, it's done, we're done. And it was kind of, I guess that was the one thing I noticed that was different with kids as opposed to how we tested in the past. And you felt like it took up a whole morning or a whole afternoon. And so that was kind of a reflection I noticed from the students.
Yeah, a little less suffering for them.
Yeah.
So if we're going to take like a wider lens, how do you see MAST shaping teaching and learning and assessment going forward? And has it highlighted any plans or goals for your district in this next year?
I think just finding the value in those individual standards is something that a shift that I've seen, and this highlights that, just being able to really look at not just, is this student good at math or are they proficient at math? What are some areas, because you have students who can add and subtract really well and are great problem solvers, but division really through them. And so just like someone mentioned earlier, just kind of looking at the whole sequence of the child and the data points and seeing more specifics about that student instead of kind of these generalizations. And it is nice that we were doing all this work, and now that the state testing is so cohesive with all the work that we've been doing. So as a district, it makes, teachers and decision makers, I feel like, think that it's all going to meld together and create really great systems moving forward for teachers coming in, for new teachers, for people transferring grade levels. There'll be these systems and supports within our instruction, within the data that's provided, and as to how to appropriately share that with parents and among our team, and to use those data points to drive our instructions, look at our reading interventions, look at math interventions. We're adopting a new curriculum, a new math curriculum in our district in the next couple of years as a process. And I know that the MAST scores will play into that, looking at some of those pacing and planning and data points and scores. All of that is such valuable information moving forward for our district to find something that will work with the goals and the standards that we have set out already.
I'm guessing you guys are glad that you were a pilot school.
Yeah, the pilot was nice because that definitely felt a little less pressure, and to be able to look at it and kind of know what was coming to start the year. So that was really nice.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that information you were just talking about informs your curriculum program selection and which textbook you might want to lean forward. And I think it'll be interesting too, because of the new curriculum standards at the state as well, how that's all going to come together when you guys do that work.
Yeah, and I'm not a part of that team, but I know that that's something that they're already looking at and examining as they move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice that the team seems to be taking that whole picture mindset of, here's this assessment piece, here's this standards piece, and how does this come together in the curriculum program that we're going to select.
Mm-hmm.
Smart. Yeah.
Well, I think that's all we have for you today, Rachel. We are really grateful that you were able to join us today and give us a teacher's perspective into MAST. And I think it's been really helpful for us too to hear how all of your programs at Anaconda are aligning to kind of make MAST a priority and fit in with proficiency-based learning.
So many acronyms too. It's like, is it standards-based grading, proficiency-based learning? We use so many different terms for similar type concepts.
And we didn't get interrupted, Rachel. Nobody came to your door.
I know someone did knock, but they must have taken the hint and walked away, because I heard a knock and I just didn't get up because I'm kind of in the back corner. They can't see me.
That is the sign there's no kids in the building, because if it was a child, it would have been just nonstop knocking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, where is she?
Yep. Well, thank you for spending your time with us today. And I know it's been busy trying to get everything set up for your classroom for the school year. So we really value the time you're taking to speak with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel, for joining us and sharing your experience with the MAST assessment with us and our listeners. Your insights offer helpful guidance as schools across Montana continue administering MAST and fine-tuning the role that it plays in instruction throughout this school year. If you have ideas for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. We also want to share that OPI's Tribal Student Achievement and Relations Unit, or TSAR, have started their own podcast. It's called Creating Conditions, and you can listen to their first episode by following the link in the description. Thanks for learning alongside us, and we hope you'll join us for our next episode. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep inspiring.